Hi everybody, I'm Trish Christ. NECAT and our super crew of teenagers are happy to welcome an audience into the studio today. We're here with My Father's War. Creators Carol Ponder and Robert Kiefer are going to tell us all about this wonderful project.
It's our Nashville.
It's our Nashville! It's Crystal Nashville!
It's our Nashville.
It's our Nashville.
We all know how to talk about our organization during meetings, but what about the chance encounter of a lifetime? You never know who may share your next elevator, notice your logo on a notebook or a tote bag, and ask what you do. What's the clearest, most persuasive thing you can say in a short elevator ride?
Because My Father's War, his memoir, is one person's story, the specificity makes it universal, like any hero's journey. And we present his story as authentically as we can in his voice, using his words and the songs he loved. And that allows veterans to respond honestly. My father, Herschel Ponder, was a fighter pilot in World War II. He flew 51 missions in his beloved P-47 Thunderbolt over the European theater.
But before that, her father was just a boy from the mountains.
The minstrel boy to the war is gone. In the ranks of death you will find him. His father's sword he hath geared on, and his wild harp slung behind him. Land of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world forsake thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one sacred harp shall save thee.
When the Japs hit Pearl Harbor, I was seeing a movie in the Plaza Theater in my hometown of Asheville, North Carolina, and all at once the screen went blank, the lights came on, and the manager climbed on stage to announce that we, no doubt, were at war. I was alone. There were voices all around me, but I felt something way deep inside me. And emptiness, possibly dread. For the moment, I was lost. But in the next moment, I was ready. Whatever was to come, I'd do the best that I could.
Of all of the interviews and nonprofits that we're featuring in the Our Nashville TV series, yours stands out. It's different from all the others. To begin our chat about it, let's start from the beginning. Tell me a bit about your father-in-law.
Wow, Herschel, he was something. I knew him for nearly 30 years before he died. Remarkable, brilliant, generous, difficult man, very difficult. He could go from laughing, having a great time to the depths of depression in just before your eyes, in just a few seconds. Mm-hmm. And that is classic of post-traumatic stress. And that was what the war did to him.
Certainly you did not know him before his experience in the war, but by all accounts, was he different beforehand, personality-wise?
From what I have learned from reading his memoir and from talking to family members, yeah, he was a pretty carefree kid in the mountains. I liked to fish and hunt. As he said, paint pictures, act on stage, sing in choirs, play tennis and basketball. He was just a great kid. Yeah, and then the war happened. And like anybody who goes to war, it changes. It changes here. Yes.
My dad was also in World War II, and small town, Tennessee, country boy. He had a debilitating stutter when he went to war, and when he came back from the war, he didn't have a stutter anymore.
Wow.
That's an example of how profound
Yeah.
a
That is a
life-changing.
profound change.
Just from your perspective, Robert, what are some challenges that are just hard for a man in general that are maybe exacerbated by an experience like your father-in-law's?
Well, we're taught, at least in our society, that a man doesn't necessarily have to show emotion. And, just take it as it comes. Deal with it. Soldier on. But I think another really hard thing to do is to kill another person. And Herschel did that a lot. He
Strangers.
was really, really good at it. Yeah, strangers who were trying to kill him. In the play, when we finally begin the combat portion of it, he says, after my first mission, I realized, my whole life up to this moment had been vivid and easy. No more. And he said, these Germans were playing for keeps. Damn their souls. And he changed. From that point on, there was no dread or fear. It was just fact. Destruction and survival.
Wow.
That's all it was.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what it does to you. And he did that for 51 missions.
51 missions.
Yeah.
For, say, an 18-year-old person today who might be considering a career in the military or so forth, we've had movies and lots of TV, and we have video games that simulate experiences. When you think about my father and Carol's father, these boys didn't have any of that. They had, well, you tell me, what sort of image of what he was getting into do you think Herschel had?
I think he had no image of what he was getting into. I think he signed up because he thought he had a duty to respond to the attacks at Pearl Harbor and to what was happening in Europe. So it was that simple.
That's the right reason.
Yeah, it's a good reason.
Carol, what a big story we have to talk about.
It's huge.
It's huge. It is huge. Please tell me your dad's exact military role. What was he?
He was a P-47 fighter bomber pilot. He was a lieutenant, so he was an officer. And his role was to fly wherever General Patton told him and to bomb or kill or strafe or blow up towns, railroads, bridges, dogfights. The P-47 was huge, is huge, but a single person plane. And so basically they covered Patton from the sky in all sorts of ways.
So let's start from the beginning. How did this come to pass?
Well, of course, he didn't write the memoir until 1989, never talked about the war, 2 or 3 small stories, and sat down at the table with a bunch of legal pads and a jar of No. 2 pencils and wrote for 6 weeks until he was done, and wrote in his storytelling voice. And when he was finished, he was better. So he just wrote it for the 3 of us, for his daughters. And then my older sister had some, Kinko copies bound and sort of passed them out to other family and a few friends, and people loved it.
While he was still living?
While he was still living. He finally said, okay, yeah, I guess. And sharing that and having people's response to it furthered his healing.
Tell me about the responsibility you feel as an actor, not only portraying your wife's father, even if it were portraying him in a soda shop, you would still feel a certain amount of responsibility to
Yes.
do justice to his life. But tell me about your responsibility in portraying a man, obviously your wife still loves and respects and admires and all of those. That's a heavy responsibility, and performing this story in front of other veterans who have lived a very similar life to his.
The actor part of me really doesn't care that it's my father-in-law I'm playing. I'm playing a character. I'm not Rich Little doing Herschel Ponder.
Sure, yes.
I'm Robert Kiefer creating a character based in part on my personal knowledge of the man and on his writings. And every word I say in the play is taken directly from his memoir. He was a very good writer, and he was a storyteller. And we've approached it as a storyteller. The most profound moments are in the discussion afterwards, when somebody who has never spoken of their experience in combat all of a sudden will raise their hand, says, "Yes, sir," or "Yes, ma'am. Thank you for telling my story." And we ask them to continue talking, and frequently they do. We've had people 90 years old talk about their experience for the very first time, and their wife of 70 years sitting next to them going, "You did what? Or what happened to you?" Never knew. This show inspires them to talk. I never forget that I'm telling somebody else's story, and it is an everyman story, but it is not mine. It's every soldier's story. So I feel a profound sense of responsibility to get it right and to tell the truth so that they can, if they wish, respond with their own story.
When Herschel finally flew his first mission over Germany, he encountered flak for the first time. Flak. Flying shrapnel that sparkled in the sun and ripped apart anything it hit.
I was Captain Knisley's wingman. As soon as the previous flight's bombs exploded, Knisley headed in. When he fired, I fired next, about 3-second bursts. Flak was popping all around and in front of us. The road, trucks, buildings started sparkling. Knisley turned to the left. I followed. All at once, there was a complete wall of flak right in front of us. The only time in 51 missions that I saw anything like it. We were headed right into it. I was stunned. My lips grew tight. I sucked breath between my teeth. I was climbing right into it. The 47 felt like it quit flying, like it was suspended and couldn't move. The damn flak was all around me. My instincts took over. From the climbing turn to the left, I jerked the stick back, hit the right rudder hard, half snapped into a dive to the right, straight into the wall, picked up speed, racked us to the left, back to the right, pulled up sharply to the left, and came up back on the outside of Knisley. I hadn't been hit. It wasn't my time. Impossible. No way even a wren could have survived that. I was limp, exhausted, thankful, mad as hell. Those Germans were playing for keeps. Damn their souls. My inner being was on hold. If it was going to be like this, there was no way I could survive.
We've, I guess, done almost 200 performances in 7 states at this point. We've just started working in middle schools and high schools. It's very simple storytelling. There are no big slides or projections. It's just the storyteller and a musician who sings and plays the guitar and does the narration. That's it. And they're dead quiet. College kids love it. And then veterans of all ages afterwards say, "That's my story."
Wow.
And whether they're 20 or 90, they start talking.
We all know that war is about conflict. And that's one level of
emotion and responsibility and stuff to deal with for people who participate in war, who are hired to participate in war, who are drafted to participate in war. Talk to me a bit, if you would, about the conflict that begins, well, certainly during war, but when you get home. What surfaces? Tell me about that conflict within a person who has experienced war.
That may be the magic of this memoir. Herschel, as a storyteller, was able to put himself 100% into the time that he was writing about. So when he was in the war and killing people and napalming soldiers in trenches and watching them run away and shooting a man off a motorcycle and watching him bounce up and hit the second-story window of the building. And he wrote mostly about his expertise, about camaraderie, about the reality of what he and his plane could do together. And then when he came home, and actually once the war was almost over, and they were waiting to see whether or not they were going to go to the Pacific, and they had time to think, they all sort of began, or most of them. My father certainly began to think about, what have I done? And in the memoir, he talks about looking a German soldier with a pom-pom gun sitting on this thing that will shoot, the plane down, basically. Looking him straight in the eye, and then flying away from him, and the guy turning and shooting at him.
Wow.
And the most telling moment happens on Christmas Eve after he got home, a few months. He wrote that he thanked the good Lord for his survival, asked his forgiveness for committing murder, and then asked his blessing on my mother and him. And that's the conflict, that's the moral conflict. I did my duty. I was really good at my job. I did what I was supposed to do. I did what I was told to do, and I improvised. He was a tremendous improviser, was shot down and came back to fly again. And then he came home and had to face the fact that he had, in his mind, committed murder, which is a mortal sin. So how do you deal with that?
How do you deal with that?
How do you deal with that conflict? I don't know.
I don't know either, my goodness.
I do know that hearing my father's story frees other veterans to talk about it and to uncover things they've been guarding for 2 years or 70 years.
My name is Chantel Warfield, and I met them at the set. Came to view the play about a month ago, and so I had the pleasure of meeting them after the production was over. I knew it was going to be about someone's war memoir. I had no idea to expect the thrills, the bitter, sweet moments, the sad. I mean, you had no way of knowing of the greatness that was to come. One in particular, when Herschel was speaking of the Air Force, which I am an Air Force veteran, that really drew me in. A lot of similarities between that war and the war I served in Iraq. Those were the moments that he expressed, even though there were years and years apart. They were so eerily similar that it just drew you in and just took you back to a place that you thought you'd never go again. It's healthy. If you keep suppressing those thoughts and suppressing those feelings, eventually, it'll get the best of you. So at some point, you're gonna have to face. You have to. War is not easy. And just the way that he described war for him, it took my war experience times a million. I work every day with a lot of World War II, Vietnam vets, Cold War, and it's a privilege. I will have to say thank you because of how he conducted himself, his courage that he exhibited. It paved the pathway for us younger to know how to conduct ourselves at war. And I would have to definitely say thank you for his service and his sacrifice, and for leaving a story like that so realistic. It was almost like we were there. He allowed us, through his experiences, to be able to live in that moment of time with him. And I would have to say thank you.
My name is Matthew Lang. I've been labeled with PTSD and major depression. With me being a veteran, granted I was an air pilot, I was almost a grunt. I was in the United States Cavalry, and I did reconnaissance for the Army. So you could actually picture yourself as her father in the play, and it was difficult on some things. It really makes me think on my friends and family. It made me really look at my values of the world. I actually, after seeing it, I requested to go to the chaplain in the VA and to focus on what they call moral injuries, which he helped tremendously. The things I would tell some of the veterans that haven't seen it or missing it, I'd encourage them to go see it, if not just to understand that you're not alone.
Kashanti Maria Gaskill. I'm a licensed professional counselor in private practice here in Nashville, Tennessee. I think a key element of this work is that live performance bypasses the psyche's defense mechanisms, which is where the traumas are stuck. And it allows access to things that people wouldn't normally talk about. For instance, you may have lost someone you love dearly and feel that you're okay about it, but not really processed the grief. And you go to a movie, and there's a scene in the movie that gets beneath the defenses and opens you. And that's what this show does for veterans and for people who love veterans and people who have lived with the damage that the war has left in the veteran. So a very, very simplified version of trauma is that the left brain's ability to tell the organism, the whole organism, that it's in the past and it's not happening now, gets sort of turned off when there's a trauma. And the trauma's lodged in the right brain and the limbic system, the primal brain, where the person can just re-experience that over and over as if it's happening right now. And again, this work gets below that and helps people to access that which they've been unable to maybe even experience themselves, but certainly not talk about. I have never witnessed this show without seeing its profound effects on the people who are watching it, whether they are veterans or families or loved ones of veterans or people who are even remotely involved with war or don't know much about it. It affects everyone deeply because it goes right to the heart of the experience.
My name is Nan Gurley, and I have known Robert Kiefer and Carol Ponder for probably 30 years. World War II was a popular war in that the definition of good and evil was very, very clear. So it was a heroic thing to have served and to come home after that. Other wars, thinking of Vietnam, where the lines are not quite so clear and the victory wasn't decisive. Coming home from serving in a situation like that, especially, I mean, it's heartbreaking to think about what our Vietnam vets faced. It wasn't right. It wasn't fair or honorable for them to come home to the kind of reaction they came home to. Their grieving was compounded by the fact that we weren't welcome home, proud of you, way to go. So it's a production that speaks to any age. Anyone who is interested in the history of our country, and thank God Robert and Carol are helping enhance that. We need to know our history, or we're doomed to repeat it, and we're less richer for knowing what our forebears have done, especially those who have sacrificed deeply for our freedom. But it's exciting to see younger people see this. It's already exciting to hear the memoir of a fighter pilot. That's just cool, no matter how old you are. But to learn about it from the daughter of the man who lived through it is very powerful.
Oh, fly away, little pretty bird, where the cold winter winds don't blow.
It's